Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of GitOps Guide to the Galaxy. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV, and I am joined by the one and only Christian Hernandez. Hello, Christian. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing good. I'm excited because I'm wearing a Tecton shirt. I just got it actually. So
like on brand.
Yeah, on brand, right? Yeah. So exactly. So doing good, doing good. We're back. We took a little break from streaming to do KubeCon, to do the GitOps Con, right? And so for those of you who
let me grab that playlist.
Yeah. If you grab that playlist, drop it in the chat. We did GitOps Con. We did a day zero event for KubeCon. That went absolutely amazing, far beyond what I expected and hoped for. All of you out there, you guys are awesome. Even with the digital fatigue, even with the meeting fatigue, you guys stayed on the average 3 hours. So that's a long time for someone, right? That was a long time for you guys to be sitting at a computer and watching talks, even after all the digital fatigue that we've been feeling. So, which is part of the reason why we took a break, during KubeCon, and just that way you're not just inundated with stuff. So, so we're back, right? And thank you everyone who attended GitOps Con, and Chris is going to drop a link in the chat.
I got
playlist.
Dig up the playlist.
Yeah. So yeah, take yeah. Too many tabs, right? Too many tabs. So
exactly.
This week I'll be talking about application sets and app of apps design. So first I'm gonna let me share my screen, right? So let me get this up and running. It's never where you think it is. Okay.
Of course not. No.
Yeah.
Just be helpful.
Yeah. So let me know when you see my screen. Is that
sound
good?
I got
you. Cool. So I can't talk about application sets without first talking about app of apps. So so let's talk a little bit more about app of apps. If you Google app of apps, it's the first hit. So this was
for now.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird not seeing an ad first, right? So that's how you know this is very specific. So what's app of apps, right? So in the show description, it starts off with the chicken egg problem. And so the chicken egg thing is, okay, well, I have all these applications I want to deploy in a GitOps fashion, right? So like I'm using Argo CD, I'm doing GitOps. I have all these applications. How do I bootstrap in a GitOps way, right? How do I get my applications bootstrap deployed and managed in a GitOps fashion, right? And this is what let me make this a little bigger, for those who don't see. It's and let me drop this link here as well because it's a good read. It's is what we call app of apps pattern. So since Argo CD deploys only all essentially it's doing is it's applying YAML, right? Or it's applying manifest, right? It could be, we always assume YAML. I guess most people use YAML, but I mean, I guess you could also do JSON, right? That's a valid manifest, right? That Kubernetes takes. So you have since all it's doing is applying YAML, then the manifest for the application is also YAML, right? So the idea was basically saying, well, I want to create an application that does nothing more than just deploy applications, right? So it's an application of applications, right? Or app of apps, right? And here in this little diagram, you can see how that works basically, right? So you have an application that says, hey, deploy this application, that application, and then it'll go ahead and deploy those manifests, right? So then this does two things, right? It's really dead simple to bootstrap, meaning that I can apply one manifest and get my entire, infrastructure cluster up and running with one manifest. And then you by by extension, you get this convenient watcher app for all your applications. So so let's say here in this example, like someone accidentally deletes the guestbook application. Well, the application that deployed that application says, hey, that's missing, Argo CD then redeploys it. So you get this convenient watcher application, and then you kind of get a way to roll these out. So like you get the things like sync waves and resource hooks, right? So for those of you who don't know what that is, there's another, I did a stream about resource hook and sync waves and things like that. So let's drop that playlist. Red.ht, yeah, GitOps, yeah, right? So
I think I have that as a short command. Yeah.
Oh, do we have it? We have it as a bang command. That'd be cool. So
GitOps, yes.
If not, there's nice.
There you
go. I was say, if not, there should be.
I just need to change that link, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's yeah. Anyways.
Well, it points to the same thing. So we well, what's funny is me and Chris had the same idea, but we created different bit.ly links for it. It points to the same thing. I know
at some point someone's going to come along and trample your GitOps thing. So I got to
yeah, exactly. So it's like those Instagram people is like, this is my backup account, right? In case someone except this is for Bitly, right? I guess this is the tech, the marketing equivalent of that. So sync waves, if you haven't seen that, I did a stream about that. You get that as well, since it's nothing other than just an application that deploys other applications. Another way the people tried to solve this problem was with Helm, right? So they actually did a Helm. They created a Helm chart of a Argo CD application, right? So they kind of laid it out there, right, as a standard Helm template, Helm chart, right? And they parameterized it, right? So they basically made it parameters, saying, hey, and this was kind of a convenient way to quickly stamp these out, right? Kind of stamp saying, hey, well, if I have one application to many clusters and I have many clusters defined, like how do I do that? You can do that with app of apps, or you can do that in this Helm fashion where you just kind of say, you provide your values.yaml file, and then you can just quickly stamp them out like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So so that was another way of doing this, right? And this is kind of it was an interesting way to solve the problem. And so some of the maintainers of Argo CD says, why can't we just have built that into Argo CD, right? So so they came up with something called ApplicationSets. Argo CD, right? Let me Google that. I'm doing this is very
on the fly.
On the fly. Well, I'm doing this very what do you call it, Andrew style, right? Like I'm just gonna show you how I look things up.
Yeah.
So this brings you here, but actually there's an actual documentation site here. So I'll bring that over here to the chat. And so the application sets is meant to, let me make this a little bigger. Oops, wrong one. I was like, my Discord screen got a lot bigger. I'm like, that's the wrong one. Okay. And so I got an application set. So the idea with the application set is essentially a graduation or the next iteration of what application sets were. It's just like, all right, since everyone's doing application sets and these Helm charts, let's kind of mix these things together, right? Like, actually, let's make this a thing. So they call that an application set. So an application set is nothing more than I would like to say an application factory, right? So you give it, one of the engineers, I was talking to one of the engineers, Argo CD engineers. I said, yeah, application set is nothing more than you give it this application set resource, it goes brrr, and then a bunch of applications come out, right? So it's kind of like a it's like brrr, and
sound effects and everything.
Yeah, sound effects.
The money counter going. Yeah.
Yeah, money counter going, and it spits out applications, right? So it's essentially a templating agent to create applications, right? And so before I go into how how to define it and how to use it. Let's go to, there's this use cases. There we go. So there's a few use cases, right? That it solves here. So this, it gives you the
zoom
ability.
in like one more notch if you could.
Just
please.
one more notch.
Yeah.
There we go. Is that good?
I didn't change the graphic size at all.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
So yeah, you got the little Argonaut right here. So essentially you got a team working on a Git repo that you have Argo, and then you can stamp out your applications in, kind of like a hub and spoke. And this is kind of the example I'm going to go through in a little bit is I got a central Argo and then many Kubernetes clusters and one application set can manage all of this for you. And so that was the one of the use cases, right, that it solves is that if here it says it, I think perfectly, if you need to scale across large number of clusters and automatically respond to the lifecycle of new clusters. So it's essentially hub and spoke management model. So another one, let's go over here, is if you have different teams, right? So if you have like an infra team working and like another team working on, like, say, an application, team 2 is working on another application, you can use application sets to manage all of that for you, right? So it's supposed to be flexible to be kind of a hub and spoke kind of design, or a what do you call it, application scoped, right? Where it's like Argo CD can handle, what do you call that? Man, it's been a long week. The word is almost
because I'm even blanking on it.
Yeah. Multi-tenancy is what I'm
there
thinking
you go.
about. There it is. So multi-tenancy, right? So it's meant to handle that as well. And then, it's also supposed to be handling things like self-service of applications, right? So I can drop, let's say, a bunch of YAML, and Argo CD will automatically bring that up. So, and so with application sets, there are things called generators, right? And so here in this, if you go to the generators, it'll list them. There's different types of generators. There's one up and coming that I'll explain at the end. There's one that's list generator. And then I'm going to go through this really quick because I actually have examples to go through here. And I have a cluster generator. And then hold on, the Git generator. The Git generator actually has two sub generator categories. Is one called a directory and one called a file, right? So there's three main generators: list, cluster, and Git. And Git has a sub generators, right? So let's go over some examples here that I have. If you guys want to, here, I can hard link that in the chat as well. So let's go over to Visual Studio, right? Visual Studio Code. Let's look at the
definitely blow that up, dude.
Blow that up, yeah. Okay. I don't even know what I have this set to. Okay, so
there you go.
List generator. Here we go. Is that good? Maybe one less. How's that look? I know good. Nareen's on.
Let us know. Yeah.
Is that yeah? Let us know if I go one up or down here. So
Narindev has a question.
Yeah.
What is the difference between multi-tenant and multi-cluster?
Yeah. So
which is a very valid point. Yeah.
It's a very valid question. Yeah. So multi-tenant means it usually means that you have one cluster, but many users in that cluster, and they don't necessarily know about each other, right? So you have this is the idea of like a centralized cluster. Where team 1 is working on an application and team 2 is working on another application, and they don't actually necessarily know about each other. I mean, I guess they can, right? It's a central cluster in your team, but
plus up on size, please.
Just one plus. Okay. They don't necessarily know about each other. That's multi-tenant, right? So you have many tenants in one cluster, whereas multi-cluster is exactly what it sounds like. You have many clusters. So and it's not like right? You can have multiple clusters and all of them be multi-tenant, right? So it's not one or the other. So application set. So I have this application set. This one is the list generator. List generator takes, it's a simple kind of like you're just listing elements, right? You're doing essentially key value pairs, right? So cluster, I'm gonna call it cluster 1, URL. This is the URL of that cluster, right? And then I just go through the list: cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3. And that's the generator section. And in the template section, I'm just taking what I listed up there and just plugging them in, kind of like the Helm template idea, right? So this looks very the Helm charty thing that I showed you earlier. This is kind of essentially that same idea. They're taking those key values and just using those to populate these things. So in this case, my name of my cluster is gonna, then my name of my application is gonna be each iteration of cluster. And then when I'm building the source repo, right, I'm taking things like cluster, right, I'm dropping it in here for my overlay, and then my server URL, I obviously get it from that URL. And so what this looks like, so let's go back here. Should I make this bigger? Let us know. So
yes.
So if I do,
just tell you yes right now.
Yeah, it's just yes right now. Let's make it huge. How about that? Okay.
There you go. All right.
So let's do. I have a management cluster and 3 clusters, right? So like here, cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, right? So I have 3 Kubernetes clusters, and then I have a central management cluster that I installed Argo CD on. So you can see this with config. What is it? Get context. This will be hard to see, so I'll just do -o name. I have 3 clusters that I'm connected to. I have one in Azure and 3 of them on AWS. Cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3. Let's see how this looks like. This is, yeah, that's ugly, but that's essentially what I have here, right? And so so then I have, if I do get cluster, right? So then I have Argo CD. This clusters, I think. Cluster list, is it? Yeah. Okay. Right. I'm already. Let me clear this. I've already I've already attached it. Right. In cluster means the cluster that I'm running on. So the
okay. So
and
status unknown is because you're there.
Yeah, because I'm there. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm already running here, so I don't need to add myself. It's kind of weird. That does say status unknown, but let me go back here to the Argo CD instance. I can see that here as well. Clusters, right? I have cluster 1, cluster. Let me make this bigger. How about that?
Oh yeah.
There we go. Cluster 1, cluster 2, and cluster 3.
Even here. More. Go bigger.
One more. Go big or go home, right?
Right. Yeah. Like the fact there's gray space, eliminate it.
Yeah. That's bad. Okay, I gotcha. Just get rid of all the gray space. Yeah. So I have this here, 3 clusters: cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, right? And this in cluster, this is the one running on Azure. So what ends up happening is that when I go back to my application set, is that essentially this is going to build 3 applications: one in cluster 1, one in cluster 2, one in cluster 3. So I have one app called BGD deployed across these clusters: cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3. And depending on where it is, it's going to show different colors. So how can I control click here? Yeah. Yes, open. I trust myself.
Yeah, right. Like
yeah.
I think I turned that off a long time ago, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It turns itself back on from time to time. It's super
annoying.
Yeah,
like when you do like an update or something, right?
Right.
Let me do this.
No, I really meant for you to save that setting.
Yeah. List. Okay. So here I have overlays, right? So this it's kind of hard to visualize this, so bear with me. You may have to watch this video a few times. It took me a while to kind of like piece everything together. So here, so when this runs the first time, it'll pick up cluster 1, right? And it'll drop it in here, right? So here, application sets list generator overlays cluster 1. So application sets list generator overlays cluster 1. And the change here is there might not be a change. It is blue, right? So I'm going to have to show a blue square. This, for those of you who've been watching a while, this is my application that shows the blue squares, right? When it runs the second time, right, it'll go over overlays cluster. So the second time is cluster 2. So let's visit that, cluster 2. Oops, wrong file. I'm going to make it green. And then the third one, when it runs the third time, it'll do yellow. I've added support for yellow. So it's not just blue, green, it's blue, green, and yellow.
Ooh.
So fancy stuff going on.
Well, yellow and blue make green, so this only makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So you got I was thinking about Andrew was saying do CMYK, right? So
God, no.
we can get crazy like that. So yeah, so this is essentially, it'll create 3 applications. So it'll load this, it'll run 3 times, and I'll end up with 3 applications. So let's do that. Let's have a little fun here. C apply get examples, application sets, a list, right? So we're doing the list generator, and then so go. This is the brr thing I was telling you about earlier. So yeah, so it's doing that. Let's go to Argo. So now here you see it created 3 applications. Boom.
Nice.
Right. It created here cluster 1, right here in cluster 2, and here in cluster 3. So if I go to this guy here, and let's go to this guy's route. I can't wait. So there's an update on Argo CD. I was actually talking to engineers today about it, that anytime it detects a route or an ingress, it gives you that little external link. It gives you a little icon that you could click that takes you to that route or ingress point. Instead of now, I have to actually click on it, wait until it loads, scroll for infinity until I find it, copy it, open a new tab, paste it, hit enter. Like it makes my life easier. But anyways, so here it has the blue square, right? So let's go back here. Let's look at.
Narendev has a question about namespaces. Like, I'm assuming you're just using default because it's a demo kind of deal and whatever. Or
no, there's actually an actual. I'll answer that question right here after I show it. But there's a really good question. I'll show you what's going on. And then cluster 3, we should expect the yellow. So let's look at the yellow. I hope William Tam is watching, because this is what I have to do. That's the art. That's the.
This is how you submit issues nowadays.
This is how I submit
like
issues.
You mentioned it on publicly shaming people. This is awesome.
Yeah. So there goes yellow, right? That's how you get RFEs in, right? So that's yellow, right? So blue, green, yellow, in different clusters, right? So there's a few things going on here. With one manifest, I was able to create 3 applications spread across 3 different clusters. So now to Narev's question, right? So here, the application set actual manifest lives in a namespace called OpenShift GitOps. Here, I am deploying the application to a namespace called BGD, right? So if I go to say here, cluster 1, let's make this a little bigger. Oops. Control Shift. That's maybe one too many. Oh well. So if I do get namespace. Well, I can actually do here BGD, right? It'll show up right BGD. So I'm actually deploying the application in BGD here. When you see default here, this is a project, but in the context of Argo CD. So Argo CD has its own concept of a project. If I go over here, one of the filters here, project, it has a project here. I haven't created other projects inside of Argo CD. So the reason, that's the multi-tenancy aspect of it, right? You can create different namespaces inside of Argo and give permissions to those namespaces to different developers. So So yeah, so there it is. So that's the answer to that. So that default project has nothing to do with a Kubernetes default project. It's kind of confusing a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Just
because
it's called project, right? Like
because it's called project, right? Yeah, and also they don't behave the same either.
No, they're completely different things, right?
Yeah, they're different paradigms. Even
Yeah.
so, it's kind of so it's, maybe I should do a show about that, like how the
Maybe,
paradigm,
yeah,
how it differs, right? Because
like
it
the
is
mental shift that has to happen. Yeah.
exactly, and so cool. So so that's what that is there. So I deployed an application there. If I go and delete this, right? Cluster one.
For shame.
For shame. Cluster one, BGD. I do a foreground delete. It'll actually delete the application, but the application set, since it's watching it, automatically recreates it. So it's saying, oh, hey, you wanted, this application to be created. Now it's gone. Well, I'm going to recreate it. And so that's the that overarching watcher. So kind of recap, it's kind of a key value pair in order to build the application, the actual application manifest, right? And maybe I should show the actual application manifest. So if I do k get applications, OpenShift GitOps, right? It should show 3, right? Yep. Oh, and if I want to show application sets, you just add ets to it, right? And it shows the BG application set. So if I do applications and I do cluster 1 BGD, actually let me edit this so we can see. As you see, it just built the application manifest based on the template.
This is a fair question, so I'm going to ask it. Are you using, like, what shell are you using? What enhancements? That kind of thing.
Because shell in
your terminal window here, yeah.
I'm just using like as in bash or Powerline. This is actually Pureline.
Pureline, so, okay.
Which is kind of like Powerline. So if you look at Powerline, get familiar with that. And then there's the only problem with Powerline is that it launches a Python subshell.
Anyways,
Hillary.
It's called, yeah.
By the way, Hillary, cover your ears. I don't want the overhead of Python running. So there's this other thing called Pureline that does everything Powerline does except in Bash. So there you go. So there you go. So look up Pureline. And also I'm just using K instead of kubectl because I just created an alias. So, oh yeah, one thing I did want to note about the list generator is that this has to be cluster and this has to be URL. They're not just dumb key value pairs. You actually have to name it cluster and you actually have to name it URL. Okay. There is an RFE to make that any key value pair. So that's out there. They're actively being worked on. And then a way around that today is there's this unknown field called values. And that could be any key value pair, right? Like foo equals a bar, right? And then down here, instead of cluster, you can do things like, values foo, right? So you can kind of get around the fact that it isn't just a key value pair. So that's the list generator. So the next one of my favorites, let's delete that. Let's delete these applications. Delete. All right, cool. One manifest, this should all go away. Yes, so now it's starting to delete. So the next one I want to talk about is the cluster generator. So cluster generators, here we go. And so here, let me remove some of this stuff here so that way you can clearly see. These are my notes. Because as you see, I'm learning because this is new. Oh, this is one thing I forgot to mention. Chris, that we got yelled at about.
You got yelled at about?
We did.
Really? We did? Oh boy.
Yeah. So application sets, the OpenShift GitOps operator is GA. Yes. Application sets come along with the GitOps operator. However, they are tech preview. So
right.
There we go. That's your.
So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just completely forgot. I'm like, whoa, I should say that these are tech preview. So tech preview meaning that you call, if you have an issue, you can call Red Hat for support, but you may not get the same support, right? It's like best effort.
Right.
So
it's not a fully baked set of support docs and everything else yet. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as you see, this is it's still an alpha, right? So if you see in the first line, it's not V1, it's V1 alpha 1. So it's technically, it's tech preview. Yeah, it's new. So there will be breaking changes later, right? So like, assume there'll be breaking changes. So, so the cluster generator, a little background about cluster generators. So if you go here, if I do Argo CD, cluster list or list cluster list. Okay, cool. The clusters, Argo CD has a list of clusters, right? So where does Argo CD keep that? In a database? No, this is cloud native. We don't want stateful stuff. We use etcd for stateful stuff. So if you do a k get secrets, it's actually stored in a secret.
Oh, cool.
GitOps, not a GitOps operator, OpenShift GitOps.
There you go. Yeah.
Oops, there we go. Oh, okay. Let's do.
Oh, that's because your font's so big? Or?
Yeah. Oh, so big. Greppo.
Oh, that's a weird kind of cookie, Greppo.
Yeah, Greppo. Yeah, exactly. So here, there's a secret for each corresponding cluster, right? So if I do, let me clear the screen. Get secrets, OpenShift GitOps, and this. Oops. This secret. Let's edit this here. Oops. My fingers aren't where it should be. Okay, edit. So each secret, each cluster has a corresponding secrets in Argo. There is in the secret is data config, and this config is just nothing more than the kube config file. The name, right? So the name is base64 encoded, and the server is also base64 encoded. So if I take, let's just say name, right, and then I do an echo. Oops. Base
you can do this, 64. I believe.
I can do, right. See, there you go. It's a cluster.
Cluster 1. There you go.
Cluster 1. Cool. And then let's look at the other one. Right. And then server. Right. And then we do that base 64. Base 64. Right. And it just shows the connection of the API, right? So so the reason I'm showing you the secret and the fields in there is because this is what the cluster generator uses, right? And so it'll this name right here corresponds to the name field in the secret. Server here, right, line 26 corresponds to that server field in that secret, right? So basically, it takes the secret, it'll glean that information from the secret depending on the fields in the secret. That's how it builds it, right? But how does it know where to deploy the application, right? And this is where the cluster has something called match label selectors. And so here I have a label. I'm saying bgd:dev. So anything that I want to deploy the dev version of my application, right? So here again, remember I'm specifying dev. I'm going to use that label in order to assign it, right? And how do I assign it with the label is I basically label the secret. So what's going to happen is I'm going to label the secret. Then the application says, okay, you want this cluster to have the dev version. I'm going to build it based on the information that I'm getting from the secret. And how that looks is, so first let's, first let me close this because I think I accidentally made a change. Don't save. There we go.
There you go.
And then let's open it up again. Oops. There we go. Where are we? Yeah. Okay. So do apply. So apply. I don't want list generator. I want cluster generator, and then I want application set. Right. And so boom, it's created. But if I go back here, nothing happened. Right. So a reason nothing happened is I haven't labeled anything already. So and this is a good opportunity to talk about troubleshooting. If I do a K get pods in OpenShift GitOps, there is a pod called application set controller. So this is the one that you want to take a look at, right? So just kind of to be clear, application sets aren't built into Argo. It's actually a separate controller that all it does is that it builds application that Argo knows how to consume. So it's not like a, it's not built into Argo. It's just something that interfaces into Argo. So that way they can have different life cycles in terms of coding. So if I do a K logs of that guy. So one of the things here, yeah, so it says here, generated 0 applications, right? So it generated simple applications because it didn't find anything. So if I do, let me clear the screen again. Get secrets.
Could Argo CD use only cluster labels? Like cluster and node labels, maybe? Is that possible? That's a question from chat.
Yeah. Oh, from William. Hey, William. I only want only cluster labels. Can you clarify that?
Yeah,
just a little bit.
Cluster plus node labels. Is that possible?
Oh,
like, you don't want to use Argo labels at all on this?
Well, no. I think. Are you talking about? Yeah, I think that's a separation of, like, you want to deploy to a specific set of nodes on a cluster. And I think that's what it means. If you can clarify that,
yeah,
we can. So here, going back down this path. So for those of you who are using ACM, this is analogous to. Oh, okay. This is analogous to. I'll reference that in a little bit. This is analogous to placement rules, right? So if I do a K label. This I think I have to do secret, right? K label secret, and then what key value did I say? Oh, BGD dev in OpenShift GitOps. All right, so as soon as I label that guy, it creates the application on cluster 3. And so, like, this is cluster 1, it should be down. Cluster 2, it should be down. Cluster 3 should be down, but maybe it'll, no, it's not. It already deployed. So it deployed the application on cluster 3. So if I wanted to deploy it, let's say, okay, well, that's awesome. Let's go to cluster 2. Cluster 2 here. If I label that guy, let's go over here, applications, and then all of a sudden cluster 2 gets this application. So if you want to, say you should get a yellow square, sweet, yellow square. So if you want to, so for those of you familiar with ACM, this is similar to placement rules. Essentially, you pick a cluster based on a label. Essentially. So it's like, hey, I want to deploy it on this cluster. All you need to do is just label the secret, and then it'll go ahead and deploy that application there. So now, to William's question, right? So the answer is no. You're labeling a cluster. You want to deploy the application to that cluster. If you wanted to deploy it to a specific set of nodes, you would have to edit the manifest, the actual actually going here and doing node selectors in the actual deployment of the application.
Okay.
So, although that's an interesting use case where it's
right,
can you do that for me? Right, right, it'd be nice. Yeah, why not? That's actually a pretty interesting use case because I don't want to have to worry about managing my labels in each one of these like directories, right? Because then I would have.
Yeah. He says his use case is deploy to a cluster with label X that has node types of GPUs.
The GPUs, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like that, and then I think that makes complete sense. So the answer is no. And the way you would do it is just put it in the deployment. However, I think it's a very interesting idea because then at that point, I just have to
sky's the limit at that point.
Yeah, the sky's the limit at that point, right? Like I can start mixing and matching there. So so that's the idea of the cluster generator. So the next one that's up, let's delete this here. One thing I do have to I want to mention, I do have this other one here. If you want to target all clusters, right? Like if you just like I don't care about selectors, just put it in everything, in every cluster that I have. If you just provide an empty list of the clusters, it'll deploy to all the clusters. So yeah, William says yet another RFE. He has like, so William is one of our telco architects, and I speak to him semi-regularly. There's a few RFEs that we've come up with just by chatting about these use cases. So and also since it's alpha, if you have use cases, feel free to reach out. The Argo CD team engineers, especially the ones at Red Hat, are very receptive. Like they love these use cases, right? Because just imagine you're just like in a corner coding all day. It's kind of hard to kind of like if you're just coding all day, it's you don't have a chance to get all these use cases out. They're very appreciative of use cases and very open too. Shout out to Shubik, who leads that team. It's a great team at Red Hat. Here, let me see here. Next is so if you want to target all clusters, just give it an empty set. Empty set means all. So all right, next one is actually my favorite one, and it's one of the ones that I use a lot. It's let me close these because we don't need these anymore. Don't save. Where am I? Get dir. So the get dir generator. So this is GitHub directory generator. So this here, all it does, it looks at your Git repo, looks at your directory structure, and then just deploys applications depending on your directory structure. And so since Chris, I'm very I guess there's no easy way to put it, opinionated about directory structures.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorites because there's no need for like key value pairs, or there's no logic that you need to build into it. It's just depending on how your Git repo is laid out, it'll lay out your applications that same way. So Hillary, Braided Silver says opinionated. I guess that is a nice way of putting it. And so here I'm basically the generator. You say I'm gonna give you a Git repo, right? And then look in this path, and you notice how there's a star there, right? Basically, it says pick up all the directories that you find in this path, and then create my applications based on that. So I have something called let's see here. It'll take path, right, and base name. So base name is like built in, right? So path base name meaning whatever you find in star. And then down here it says build me an application based on that. Here I'm gonna deploy to cluster 1 in the namespace price list, and then in the path that it found, right? So this whole thing, and then it'll name it based on the namespace, right? So the best way to see how this works is if I go over here, Git dir generator applications. So here I have, how do I go here? I think I just have to, anyone from octotree that's on. I have an RFE.
Jesus, I give you a tool and you must submit.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the get dirt generator. So here I have 3 applications, right? I have an application that's a bunch of YAML, right? So this is YAML, just a bunch of, this is my front end application. All the YAMLs, essentially this is my front end. And then I have a database, which is actually a Helm chart. So this is interesting. So I have an application made up of some YAML that I've written and a Helm chart that basically I'm just consuming a service right here. In this case, I am using the Bitnami's, where's my values? There it is. The Bitnami's MySQL database, right? Because I'm going to create, like, let's say an HA database, right? So here, this is kind of interesting. I have an application that I've written, and I'm going to just use a database from a Helm chart that I found. And then I have some configuration that does things like sets up RBAC and sets up the namespace, kind of config-like things. And so if I go back here, so here, essentially, since I have 3 directories, it'll create 3 applications, right? It'll look in this path. It'll take, it'll name it whatever the base name of this path is. So if I go back, so the base name, it'll be priceless front end would be one application, priceless DB would be the next application, and priceless config would be the last one. And that's how it gets the name. And then the complete path, right, is basically everything that I found it here. So, so since the best way to figure things out is to apply it, so let's just apply. Here we are, get dir generator. And then here, app set. Come on, there it goes. There it goes. Going back to Argo. Here, so now here I have 3 applications, right? All deployed cluster 1, as you see here. There's a config that goes out, right? That creates all that. So that's one application, right? So that's one directory, as you saw in my configuration here. So I press this config. And then there is the DB. It goes here, right? And that's the next one that's going out. And then the front end, right? So the front end is actually waiting. I have sync waves. Again, if you haven't caught that, sync waves and hooks. So it's basically waiting for the DB to come up before it actually finishes deploying. So if we go to the DB, this is a lot for a database, for a simple database. But I kind of wanted to show, if I go over here, cluster 1, if I do k get pods, price list. I have a HA, because I just wanted to get fancy and do an HA example of
there's operators for that,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And so I just wanted to get fancy and do a Helm chart for this database thing here for the first cluster. So that's how that works. I have based on your directory structure, it'll deploy different applications based on that directory structure. So this is pretty cool. If this works if you have like a model repo with all your deployments and all so you can, like, in one shot just deploy that whole application stack. So also,
it's like GitOps on steroids, it feels like, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a way to massively deploy these out.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things about Argo is when they came out with ApplicationSets. I was like, yes, this is.
No, I could tell your excitement just by talking about them in chat.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't need to see your face. I already knew.
It's like, well, I was also talking to Gerald, one of the architects in Canada. I talk about him often on the stream, but I was like literally like shaking. I'm like, you don't understand. This is This is a game changer. And then he's like, yeah, whatever. And then like a few weeks later, he goes, oh yeah, no, I see why you like these.
Yeah.
after he started playing with it for a little bit, he goes, oh yeah, I could see why you like this.
Oh yeah, I can see why anybody would like this. Absolutely.
So the last one, so if none of these, so the last one is kind of one of those catch-alls, like if none of these tickle your fancy, sort of things. The last one here, and I think we're doing pretty good on time.
We do have a hard stop today, by the way.
Yeah. So I think it's actually, we did pretty good on time here.
Yeah.
Is the what we call the Git file generator, right? So what's the Git file generator? So Git file generator will deploy your application based on a config file you have stored inside of Git. So here is you say, okay, this repo, this path, right? In every directory you find,
subdirectory,
yeah, every directory you find in this path, there's going to be a config.json file. That's what I want you to read. That's what this is the application set does. And in that file, in this file, it can be configured however you want it to be, as long as it's valid JSON. That's all. That's really the only. There's two prerequisites. One, it has to be JSON. So there's a RFE to also do a YAML, but right now it's just JSON. And as long as it's valid, right? So so this is kind of a whatever your wildest dreams could be. So
right. Braided Silver asks, can the same thing be done with Docker files?
Can this same thing?
I don't think so.
Done with Docker files? I don't think so. I don't think so. That's interesting.
Because this is Argo that's operating on.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to find out if this
can it read them? Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Wildest dream. Can it read? No. For at least for this one, no. It has to be a config.json file. Like it has to actually say config.json. Or something.json. It doesn't have to say be config, but it has to be valid JSON. So if I go here and I look at the Git file generator, I have here, if you notice, I have cluster 1 with a config here, a cluster 2 with a config, and 3. So if I go over here and look at this JSON file, it's essentially, I'm just building a config, right? Name, server, overlay. Here, this is, if you're watching this, he had kind of an RFE on list generator. But I think the config.json one would have worked as well for his use case, because it could be whatever key value pairs you want. It could literally be foo bar. It could be dumb equals yes. It could be whatever you want. Because all it's doing, it's reading that file and then taking, cluster.name. It takes it actually from this config file, cluster name, right? Here, cluster.overlay is cluster overlay, cluster.server, cluster.server. And then, namespace, it could have been cluster. I could add namespace here, right? And then put it in there. So this is essentially whatever your wildest dreams, Nariv. And so, so this is how it builds that out. So if I go here, here cluster 1, I'll do a cluster 1 overlay, that sort of thing. So if I go back to Argo, yeah, see, so press this is up and running. As soon as it's up and running, let's delete it. Since we do have a hard stop, I like to do the big reveal of apply. And this is Git generator application set. Go. The factory is going brrr. And then notice how it's deploying this application now, right? So depending on, can I look at the config here? I think I can. App details, manifest. There we go. It basically it took that config.json file and just added boom, 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 boom. So, so that's the I guess Git. Yeah, application sets in general. One last thing I want to mention about application sets is you notice the generators it's an array. So you can actually mix and match generators. You don't have to have separate generators. You can actually use git dir along with git file along with, right? So you can actually use all four of them if you want, all at once in one application set. That's they don't like stack on each other, right? So like you can actually override things. So you have to kind of be careful, but you can technically use them all together. So yeah, that's application sets in under an hour. So
good job, sir.
I'm gonna need some water. Because it was nonstop talking. I do have a corresponding blog about this.
Oh yeah, that's right. Crap, I should have grabbed that before the show.
OpenShift blog. I do have. For some reason, it didn't show up.
Who will find it first?
Who will find it first? Yeah, this is probably like the last thing I want to show before we leave.
Oh, dagnabbit.
Clock is ticking too. Let's do.
Oh man. It was recently, was it not?
There we go. Found it. Okay. Yes, I found it. There's a blog about this, right? So this is the stream version of this blog that I've written. So check out the blog. I go through it in gruesome detail. Essentially all the different mix and matching. So yeah.
Awesome.
So it's cool. I think we're good. We have a hard stop. Yeah, 40 seconds to go. Let's
appreciate that.
Wrap it up. Yep.
All right, buddy. Thank you again. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. And
thank you, everyone.
Stay safe out there, but everybody, please.
Yep. Cheers, everyone.